Hi YouTube. I am hanging out in my office today because I am going to show you my year at a glance schedule. This has come up in a couple of videos and I've had several viewers that have asked to kind of see it up close and see my thought process, so I'm going to show that to you today. And I'm going to try and do it in the most logical way that I think that I can, knowing that my brain doesn't work like everybody else's, so I'm going to try and explain this as best I can. So this is what my year at a glance looks like. This is 3 pages long. This is created in Excel, and this has my basic outline for the whole year for my first grader. I did this last year, and then I transposed everything into my lesson plan book, and I wrote it down 4 million times. This year, this is the main thing that I'm doing, and then I'll write it in his planner. So this is what it looks like. It has each subject listed, and then there's a row for each week that we're in school. So here in a second, I'm actually going to turn my camera around and show you what this looks like on my computer and kind of how I set up my sheet, and then what my mental process is while I'm going through and trying to get everything placed. I don't know if it's the school teacher in me that wants to see how everything fits, or if that's just how my brain has to see it, but I really like to have my whole year planned out, at least in a general sense. And I know that that sometimes can be challenging for people, so hopefully this will help you see. So this is what my product will look like when it's finished. The 2 things that I need to complete this task would be my school calendar. This is the calendar that we have set up for our school year. So I kind of know where my breaks are going to be. I want this determined before I start laying it out in my year at a glance. And then you're going to want to have all of your books so that you have access to the table of contents, so you can see how many lessons there are or how many weeks it's divided up into. So I'm going to turn this around to my computer and hopefully kind of walk you through this. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll try and get back to you. Or if you want to see kind of what a blank copy looks like, this completed copy is on my blog, so you can check that out if you want to see what actually all of these little boxes say. So we're going to turn around and I'll show you kind of how I go through this whole process. Okay guys, here is my computer screen, and I really hope this shows up okay for you to see. This is the part of filming I don't like, is I want you to be able to see everything that I'm doing, so I hope this is okay. What I have to start with is just a kind of a blank document, and I'm not going to fill out every week of this, but I want you to kind of know what my thought process is as I'm going through. So what I've done, and if you're not familiar with Excel, it's so handy for doing lesson plans and that kind of stuff. Watch some YouTube videos on it, kind of figure out how to use it, play around with it. I love Excel. And if you're familiar with it, you probably understand why. So what I've done is made myself columns. So my first column over here is for my week number. Then I have my dates, and then I have each subject that's all the way along the top. These aren't really in any specific order, but they are in the same order that they're listed in my son's weekly checklist. So as I'm filling out his checklist, and I'm just kind of going across my row. So the first thing I've done is mark off how many weeks of school we have, which if I scroll down, I have 36 weeks. So here's the end of our school year. And I've gone through and put in all of the dates for the Monday of that week, so I know when that week starts. Couple things that you'll notice, every once in a while I have this dark thick black line here. So on the bottom of week 9, you can see I have a thicker black line. That's the end of our first quarter. It doesn't always work out to be exactly 1 page, and I want it to be as short as possible, so I make that little note to myself. Then you can see here is the end of our second quarter. If I scroll down, there's the end of our third quarter, and then obviously the bottom of the page is the bottom of our school year. Then anytime you see this heading again, when I print this, this will be the top. So this is the top of page 3, this is the top of page 2, and that way I always have that heading there. So the first thing I'm going to do, just for me to see it visually, once I have all of my weeks decided, and again, I'm going to hold this up in front of my screen here. There it is, my calendar, and went through and marked off so you can see there on the 5th, that's our last week before we have our break. So that's why having this done ahead of time is super helpful, because you want to know those dates and not have to be thinking about it while you're trying to do this as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is go through and color code my subjects so that I can see them a little bit easier. So I've already done that here. Bible is purple. All of my language arts subjects are in this green shade. Math is orange because his workbook is orange this year, so that made sense to me. His science is red, and then history is down here in the blue. So what I would do when I'm starting out, and I do some of this as I'm looking at curriculum to see how it fits, and then for sure once I have it, I'm going to go back and make sure. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to pick an easy subject because I want to start getting boxes filled in. So for example, we use Matthew C, and my son is doing beta this year, and Matthew C is really easy because he does one lesson per week. So I'm going to go in here and start writing. Now you get to see how much I can't type when I'm not looking, and put in my lessons. This is helpful to have your table of contents or your teacher's guide or whatever it would be handy, because you want to know that after lesson 7, we aren't going to go on to lesson 8. I made that mistake last year and then we were scrunched for time. I need to know that I'm going to put in my unit test for unit 1. So that's going to give me my space, and then I know that then I can go on now to lesson 8, and I'm going to go all the way down my sheet. And I'm obviously not going to fill in all of these because you don't want to watch me fill out my whole schedule again, but I am going to just arrow down so that I can show you what I do when I get to the bottom. I know that when I map this all out, that on week 34, he's going to do the unit 4 test. I'm going to give him the whole week to do that. It's usually a couple of pages. That way he's doing about the same amount per day. Then if he takes the test and he gets it done and I know we need to reteach something, we have a little bit of time in the week to do that and we're not stressed. And then I know that he's going to do the final test on week 35. And then just so I know that this is done for week 36, I'm going to put a little slash through this with a little diagonal border. So that I know that there isn't going to be an assignment for week 36. So in my head, I know I have at least a week of wiggle room with math if we need it. And then I know that that can also be incentive for him to get done early, that he'll have that little bit of time off. So that's an example of a subject that's super easy that I can real quick go through and list things out. So then I would probably go on to another easy one. For writing, we're using the Writing with Ease program. And again, that's split into weeks. So I would just do over here, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, and so on. I'm going to do the same thing with that. I'm going to go all the way down to the end, except I know that Writing with Ease is a 36-week program. So this is going to be week 36. So I know that I probably don't want to get behind on writing. Otherwise, we're not going to get done in time to be done for the school year. Then I might go to something that's a little bit more complicated. So let's go up to the top. Okay, the next thing that would be not as complicated, but not quite as easy, is reading. We are using the Ordinary Parent's Guide to Reading, and he has already been working on this. See, I can't type and talk at the same time. So I know that he's going to be working when we start on lessons 158 through 161. That's 4 lessons, so that's 1 lesson per day. And then on the next week, he's going to go on to lessons 162 through 165. This is where it gets a little tedious because now in your head, you're having to think, okay, what are my 4 days for lessons? So I would go all the way through until he's done with his book. And I know that he's going to finish that book. Now I know that he'll finish it on week 19, which is right after we come back from our long Christmas break. We take 3 weeks off at Christmas. And so he will finish up the last 2 lessons, 230 and 231. So that gives me a goal to shoot for. That also tells me if he's motivated, he could finish up those 2 lessons in December and then not have to worry about that reading book when he comes back. Then I'm going to put a note in the next box to start his reading journal, which is something that I found online that I think we're going to be using instead of a really set curriculum. And so it kind of helps me know where that's going to start. So something like reading where you're picking out lesson numbers is going to be a little bit more tedious. Let me give you, well, we're just going to go over to here to this next column for grammar. We're using first language lessons. I know that there are 100 lessons in first language lessons, so I divided that by 36. So you can always pull up your calculator. If there's 100 lessons, we're going to divide that by our 36 weeks of school. So we need to do 2.7 lessons per week. So for me, that means we're going to do 3 lessons until we run out. That gives us that buffer at the end of the year if we have things we need to make up. So again, I'm going to come in here, lessons 1 through 3, go to the next box, lessons 4 through 6, on down the line. So then in my head, before my year starts, I know that we are going to finish grammar down here on week 34. So on week 34, he's going to do lessons 99 and 100. So then I'm going to do the same thing that I did last time when I finished up with my math. I'm going to come over here and give myself a little X through my box so I know that those are done. So in my head, I know I have those 2 weeks of buffer. For example, one subject that I've really kind of chunked up a little bit more is spelling. We are using All About Spelling Level 1, and there are 24 steps in All About Spelling, and we have 36 weeks of school. And as I was looking through the beginning, I knew you can do steps 1, 2, and 3 concurrently, and I knew we could probably handle that. So I didn't do spelling the first week of school, just gave us a little more time to kind of ease into things. So I know then that we are going to do steps 1 and 2 on week 2. Then we're going to do step 3. Then we're going to do step 4. Then this week, to give myself a little bit of time, and I'm not sure how it's going to work, if we're going to be able to do a step a week or if we're going to end up getting behind. And since I have so many breaks, I opted to do 3 weeks of spelling and then take a break. So this is going to either be catch up or a break. So we'll do 3 weeks on, 1 week off. So then we can kind of get caught up if we need to, and then otherwise he gets a break. So then I would go on to step 5. Then I would go on to step 6. Then step 7. And then he's going to be able to have that catch up or break time. So that's one that I definitely had to plan out a little bit more. So doing this year at a glance, it really gave me the chance to see that instead of just trucking through and getting done 10 weeks early with spelling. I know I can kind of pace myself a little bit, not make him rush through it. And I know I give myself a little bit of time for leeway. Just moving along with handwriting, he does 2 pages, so 4 total. It's a front and back every week because he only does handwriting 2 days a week. So I know he's going to do 9 through 12 this first week. So we would do like 9 and 10 on Tuesday and 11 and 12 on Thursday. And then that is opposite. The other reason that it's nice to do this is that I know in his writing assignments, Monday or day 1 is copy work, day 2 is narration, day 3 is copy work, and day 4 is narration. So I know in my head that on days that he does copy work and writing, then he doesn't do handwriting. That just gives him one less thing to kind of try and get through. Then on the days that he does narration, where he's not writing anything down, those are the days that he does his handwriting. So this really helps to see, so I make sure I'm balancing things so that he doesn't get overwhelmed. Just to finish out like I have with handwriting, he will actually finish this part of the book right down here in February. He will be done with this book. So I'm going to put in here pages 83 through 88. Then that finishes up the book. And then down here on mine, because I'm not exactly sure how it's going to go, I put Kickstart Cursive, because we could start that guide, or we could just move on to the cursive book for next year and just go ahead and get started on that. So I put that in there, and so I have that note, and I would just go in and fill in the rest by hand when I decide what we're ready to do. Let's go back and fill in our first column over here with Bible, because this one is pretty simple. We are using the Grapevine Studies. Okay, we are using Grapevine Studies, which I think I just said, but my kids were having a moment. So we are going to go through 3 parts of the Old Testament. It's broken up into 4 Old Testament and 4 New Testament, and they're each 12 weeks long. So I know we can get through 36 weeks of that and do all 3 parts. So I'm going to do Old Testament part 1, which this first lesson then is the timeline. Then I know we're going to do Old Testament. My boxes aren't exactly the right size, because normally in my OCD I would, so I'm going to take this out, put creation, then I don't have to retype everything. I would highlight this, which is hard to see on my screen, and I would make this smaller so that it fits on one line. Okay. So I would, whoops, I need to do that one size smaller. Because I want it to be as streamlined as possible. You don't have to do that if you don't feel like being obsessive about it, but I did. So I would go all the way down, and then I know when we get down to the 24th, we're going to be starting Old Testament part 2, and then I would go through and fill in my topics from there. Same thing, kind of with science is a little bit similar. We are using the God's Design for Life series, and we're going through plants, animals, and the human body. So what I did then is I started each box with, so like this one is going to be on plants, so I always know which book I'm working in, and then I know this week we're going to do lessons 1 through 4. And then this next one, we're doing plants again. And then we're doing lessons 5 through 7. This one I actually sat down with my books and kind of looked to see where there was a good break. If there was a unit that was only 3 lessons long, then that's all we did that week. If there was a unit that was 4 lessons long, then we did 4 in a week. If there was a 5, then I kind of split them up a little bit. So I really went through and tried to figure out where there were some good stopping points. So we don't do science necessarily every day, but we have done it most days to try and get through all of the lessons. There are, in that book, I want to say there's 36 lessons in each book. So you have to do, to get through all 3 in a year, you have to do obviously almost 1 a day. Then the last one I have over there is history. And history, again, is a little bit tricky because we are doing the Diana Waring History Revealed series, and you spend 4 weeks in each unit. So the first week we started unit 1, which was creation and the flood. Can't spell flood. And so for me, it's easy because I'm just going to copy and paste down here for 4 weeks. Then when I do my specific plans on my son's weekly checklist, then I'm going to look at it and decide week 1 is a lot of reading. Week 2 is timeline, and looking at different interesting facts and peoples and places. So they go through different learning styles each week. So I'm going to separate those out when I'm doing his actual weekly checklist, but that way I can see where everything falls. So this is really long, but I hope it's helpful for you. This is just kind of the thought process that I go through. So I sit down. I don't do all of this at once because I would probably get really burned out. I would probably do, like I said, pick an easy couple of subjects and start to get your sheet filled out. I'm going to switch over to my full, this is mine that's done, so you can kind of see how it ends up looking. So I would pick, do my math first because that one's easy, do writing first. And once you start to see where all the pieces fit, then you can start to take some of those trickier ones like the spelling or the handwriting and figure out where you're going to have gaps or where you're going to have breaks and start piecing them in. This is not detailed. I'm not writing down like, read this book, read this activity, listen to this CD. It's just week 1, week 2, week 3, lessons 7 through 9, lessons 10 through 12. I can on a weekly basis go in and add more detail when I need to, but right now I can look at my whole year on 3 pieces of paper and see, kind of how things are going to fit, where we might need to make adjustments. So I really hope that this is helpful for some of you, and it's not just my brain that thinks this way. But again, if you have questions, please leave them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. There is a copy of this completed sheet on my blog. If you would like just a blank one with this template, I can take the weeks out and stuff and take out the topics. If you just want to have something that you can start to write stuff on, I know some people really like to just handwrite it out. I'd be happy to just throw a blank one up there too, so let me know if that's something that you want. So thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. It's been really fun to be behind the scenes or in front of the camera a little bit and make these videos for you guys, and I really hope that you enjoy them. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and happy homeschooling.